Alright, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين والعاقبة للمتقين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على عبدك ورسولك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. One of the things that we talked about with Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah is how he basically ignored the debates and creed of his time because of the nature of those debates. Imam Malik rahimahullah was also someone that just didn't like to argue. He wasn't into debates, nor was he into arguing. And Ma'an ibn Isa was one of his students. He says that one time I was with Imam Malik in his very old age. Imam Malik rahimahullah lived a very long time. And he said that Imam Malik rahimahullah was leaning on me for support. And as we were walking, a man by the name of Abu al-Juwayriyah, who was a very young man, he came up to Imam Malik rahimahullah and he said, I want to debate with you. Very young man. And Abu al-Juwayriyah was from the Khawarij type people. So he's coming to basically debate and make him out to be a disbeliever or whatever it may be. These are very angry people that just wanted to debate all the time. So Imam Malik rahimahullah said, if you win the debate and I lose, what happens? He said, then you're going to follow me. And he said, and if I win the debate and you lose, what will happen? He said, I'll follow you. And he said, and if a third person comes and he debates with both of us and he wins the debate, then what are we going to do? He said, then we'll both follow him. And he responded and he said that Allah sent Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with one religion. And he said, Umar bin Abdul Aziz said that a person who makes the religion his object of jidal, his object of argumentation, will constantly change it. Meaning if you're someone that likes to argue about religion, you're going to keep changing it. And subhanAllah, this man, Abu Juwayriyah, went from being Khariji to being Mu'tazili to being Qadiri to being Jahmiyyah until he finally died as a non-Muslim. Okay? Meaning young people that get addicted to arguing all the time and debating and not really having their foundation, settled and having their fundamentals, then they're just going to keep switching back and forth. Imam Malik rahimahullah also didn't like delving into philosophical debates and also entertaining those types of things when it came to understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the very famous statement where a man came to Imam Malik rahimahullah and he asked, how does Allah rise above the throne? How do we understand al-istiwa? How did Allah rise above the throne? Imam Malik rahimahullah, he put his head down and he sweated. He didn't want to answer the question. And then finally he said the very famous words, al-istiwa'u ma'loom. And in one narration, ghayr majhul, which means the same thing, that we know what rising means. We know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rising means. However, he says that al-kayf ghayr ma'qul, that there's no way to understand it. We don't know how or the details or the technicalities because laysa kamithlihi shay, there's nothing like him. Okay? He says, wal imanu bihi wajib. To believe in it is wajib, it's fard. And to ask about it is bid'ah. To talk about it too much is an innovation. So Imam Malik rahimahullah wasn't interested in that type of stuff. So what were the students of Imam Malik rahimahullah like? As I mentioned, Imam Malik rahimahullah had really too many students to count. But one of the unique things about his students is that, again, the presence of female teachers and female students. That this is something that was very normal in the madhab of Imam Malik rahimahullah in his own upbringing. One of his greatest teachers, someone that he learned from and took knowledge from, was Amra bint Abdurrahman. Amra bint Abdurrahman, radiyallahu ta'ala anha. And Amra bint Abdurrahman, she was one of the muhaddithat. She was one of the scholars of hadith of her time. She was a scholar of fiqh as well. And there's a narration from her in each of the 6 books of hadith. All of the 6 Sunan, Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, Ibn Majah, Nasa'i, Tirmidhi, they all have a mention of Amra. So she's in the chain of all of them. And she was a student of Aisha radiallahu anha. She spent a lot of time with Aisha radiallahu anha. She spent a lot of time with Salama radiallahu ta'ala anha. So she was someone that was very, very, very skilled in hadith. Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahimahullah, when he appointed az-Zuhri and he appointed another man, Abu Bakr ibn Muhammad, to go and to collect a hadith, he said the first person you should go to is Amra radiallahu ta'ala anha. So this was a woman that was a teacher to Imam Malik rahimahullah. Imam Malik used to go to her constantly and to ask her questions, and a lot of his salas, a lot of his chains go back through Amra radiallahu ta'ala anha. So he has some female teachers and female students. The greatest of his female students is actually his daughter. Imam Malik has a daughter named Fatima. And Fatima is an interesting young lady, subhanallah. She memorized not only the Quran, she memorized the Muwatta, his collection of ahadith. Imam Malik's collection of ahadith. And she was a faqihah, she was a scholar, and she gave fatwa as well. So subhanAllah, she reached the position of scholarship. She memorized all of the hadith of her father, and she memorized the fiqh of her father. And she used to be referred to not by the men and by the women. And she was someone that used to pray tahajjud with her father, very close to her father. And in fact, Imam Malik rahimahullah sometimes would put her in charge of the recitations of hadith. She would stand behind the door, and whenever she would hear someone make a mistake in the ard of the hadith of Muwatta, in the presentation of Muwatta, she knocked on the door. Like, you're messing up. So she was someone that subhanAllah had a very high position. And Imam Malik rahimahullah transferred it down to her. And Imam Malik had a son that was actually not religious at all. So Imam Malik was tested with a son that wasn't religious and was tested, and then had the blessing of a daughter that was very religious. And Imam Malik rahimahullah, Al-Qadi Iyad narrates that he said that the hearts are in the hands of Allah. Look at my son and look at my daughter. Like, he actually used to use this in his lectures. Like, look at my son and look at my daughter. The hearts are in the fingers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was a servant in the house of Imam Malik rahimahullah that by virtue of living in the house of Imam Malik, she became a scholar in her own right. So everyone that interacted with him really reached a very high level. And of course, Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala is of his greatest students, or is his greatest student. And he said that Ash-Shafi'i was his greatest student. Ash-Shafi'i spent 6 years with Imam Malik. 6 years with Imam Malik rahimahullah. And he said, very beautifully, he said that I made Imam Malik a station between myself and Allah on the Day of Judgment. Meaning I'm counting on his maqam, I'm counting on his intercession on the Day of Judgment because I made him a station. My love, he says that أَتَقَرَّبُ إِلَى اللَّهِ بِحُبِّي لِمَالِكِ. I come close to Allah by how much I love Imam Malik. He's a station between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment. And then finally, someone else that I want to mention here, Al-Imam al-Shaybani, Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, the great student of Imam Abu Hanifa, the second of the Sahibain, of the two companions, the Shaykhain, the two scholars of the Hanafi madhab. He was sent by Abu Hanifa to study with Imam Malik. He spent 3 years with Imam Malik, and he also narrated Imam Malik's work of hadith, the Muwatta, from Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, and he also compiled it. We'll talk about that. So he kind of was the first one to have that exposure to both Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik, and be able to balance out his thoughts and combine the two schools in that way. Now, how was Imam Malik rahimahullah with the khulafa? All right? What was his position with government? Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, he took, one of the things he was criticized for was that he took gifts and he took money from the government, meaning he was salaried by the government, and he didn't mind that because it didn't change his principles. It didn't change the way that he acted with them. And this shows you, by the way, permissibility. The permissibility of being paid and being salaried and so on and so forth, so long as you are able to maintain your integrity. Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, despite being salaried, despite the people giving him money, despite his position, they all feared him. The khulafa and their children feared him. The governors feared him. They were afraid of him because they knew the power that he held. And it's said about Imam Malik rahimahullah that he never once entered a palace of a khalifa or a governor except to admonish them, to criticize them and to advise them. Like, he never went to a dinner, he never went to anything that would show that. And when the Khulafat came to Medina, they had their palaces in Medina as well. So the Khalifa traditionally will have his palace in Medina that he'll stay in when he comes for Hajj and Umrah. And they used to spend some time in Medina, especially around the Hajj season. And when the Khalifa came to his palace, then everyone went to complain and things of that sort. And he would almost call for a town hall. Okay, so the Khalifa would call everyone together into his palace, and they'd sit and they'd talk about how things are going in Medina and so on and so forth. And at one point, so you had Al-Mahdi. Al-Mahdi is the Khalifa. He's not the Mahdi, that's just his name. He's the Abbasi Khalifa that's after Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, who assumed the Khilafah in the year 158 after Hijrah. So this is when Imam Malik was very old. Al-Mahdi essentially what he says is that, all of the children of the Khulafa were students of Imam Malik when he was teaching in the masjid. So when they grew up, he would call them by their first name, and they were like, they were mu'addab with him. They were very well-mannered around him and very afraid of him. And Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, he used to chastise them even in front of the people. And he was the only one that had that ability to do so. SubhanAllah, there are always these comments like government scholars and things of that sort. Ulama al-Sultan, the government scholars, are the ones that basically are mouthpieces. They're the religious legitimacy for the policies of their government, right? They're just mouthpieces. A fatwa will always come out that matches the government. And it hasn't always been that way. Even in some of the countries that exist today, there are some ulama that were salaried by the governments, but subhanAllah, they could call the government, some of the princes and kings, and they tell them to sit like kids. And they'll talk to them like ulama, right? Rather than, oh, mashallah, the king is here, oh, mashallah. Things change in regards to how you view your relationship with the government. And Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, when Al-Mahdi came, and he had this town hall in the palace, some of the ulama were sitting in the front row, and Imam Malik, rahimahullah, was in the back. And when Al-Mahdi saw Imam Malik sitting in the back, Al-Mahdi was embarrassed and he was shy. SubhanAllah, the haiba of Imam Malik, rahimahullah, was like, no, come sit here, Shaykh, come sit here, Shaykh. It just shows you that the respect that they had for Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. And Al-Mahdi, there's an incident that took place. And Al-Mahdi is one of the good ones. After Abu Ja'far. Abu Ja'far, we're going to talk about him. He had his issues with Imam Malik as well, just like he did with Abu Hanifa. Al-Mahdi, one time he had Imam Malik, rahimahullah, come to him. Meaning he asked him for some advice and things of that sort. And Imam Malik, rahimahullah, came in, and Imam Malik said, bring me a glass of water. So he went and he brought him a glass of water. And Imam Malik looked at the glass and he got up and he walked out. And Al-Mahdi went chasing him out of the palace, saying, Ya Shaykh, what happened? What did I do? He said, your cup is made of silver. I'm not going to sit and drink from a cup made of silver. That's haram. I'm not going to allow vessels of gold and silver. So Al-Mahdi went back in and he gave all of those cups. He took the silver, he had it removed. There was like a silver coating. He had it removed and he had it all donated to charity. And Imam Malik wouldn't come back to his house until he changed all of his cups. SubhanAllah, that was the level of no, I'm not going to sit there and drink from these silver cups while the ummah is in the state that it's in. Also, Imam Malik, rahimahullah, there is something that happened with Abu Ja'far. Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, and they weren't always at odds. Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, who was the second Khalifa of the Abbasid rule, if you guys remember. We said that there was first Abu al-Abbas al-Saffah and then Abu Ja'far. And he was the one that tortured Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, and had him, beaten to a point even of death. Abu Ja'far was a very arrogant man, and he walks into the masjid one day and he starts shouting. And Imam Malik, rahimahullah, shouted at him and told him to sit down, and told him, لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي. Don't raise your voices above the words of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Meaning there are circles of hadith going on right now. Behave yourself in the masjid. SubhanAllah, Imam Malik even is putting him down. Like, no, not here. You can keep that nonsense of screaming outside of the masjid. Don't bring it here. Now, just like Abu Ja'far wanted to solidify things with Abu Hanifa, he wanted to kind of have Imam Malik on his side as well. So he used to send Imam Malik gifts. He used to come to Imam Malik and visit him. And, Abu Ja'far was interested in creating this one policy, this one religious policy, like one law for everybody. And that idea comes from, it's from the Roman Empire, by the way. Like if you study historically that the government should have one religious law, that there's no room for differences of opinion and things of that sort. That's a very Christian ideology. That's a very early Roman ideology, which led to disaster. It led to a bunch of sects and things of that sort as well, because they tried to enforce a particular interpretation of religion on the people, rather than just enforcing Christianity. Abu Ja'far had that idea as well. He said, let me enforce one fiqh upon everybody. Meaning we're going to do away with everything and we're just going to enforce one fiqh. So he came to Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, and he said to Imam Malik rahimahullah, I want you to write a book. And in this book, listen to what he said. He said, I want you to avoid the leniency of Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas was known to have a very lenient fiqh, right? And he said, I want you to avoid the strictness of Ibn Umar. So don't be easy like Ibn Abbas. Don't be harsh like Ibn Umar. And he said, I want you to avoid the weird practices of Ibn Mas'ud. He's basically insulting the Abadila, because Ibn Mas'ud had very unique opinions. So he said, I want you to avoid the ease of Ibn Abbas, the harshness of Ibn Umar, the odd opinions, the weird opinions of Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and put it all together so I can enforce it on the Khilafah. I can make it a part of the government. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, he just kind of, he ignored him when he made it that way. But then he came to him and he asked Imam Malik rahimahullah, can you put together some ahadith then that will, bound, that the ummah will be able to look to and things of that sort. At that point, again, just like with al-Bukhari, the books of hadith tended to be just amongst the circles of scholars and things of that sort. Can you at least organize the ahadith in a way that people will understand the basic fiqh and things of that sort? So Imam Malik rahimahullah was already in the process of doing that. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, fine, I'll do that. And that's where the creation of the Muwatta, al-Muwatta, comes from. Now, Malik's status in hadith, al-Bukhari says that the golden chain of hadith, al-Silsila Dhahabiyya, those of you that studied Ibn Umar, you should remember this. What's the golden chain of hadith? Malik from Nafi', from Ibn Umar, from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Imam Malik narrating from Nafi', narrating from Ibn Umar, narrating from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the golden chain of hadith, and there are 80 narrations of that sort that are in al-Muwatta. Okay, so this is the best chain of hadith. Malik has a very special place in the narration of hadith. Now, what is the meaning of the word Muwatta? Imam Malik rahimahullah, as he compiles this book of hadith, and it took him 40 years, by the way, 40 years to bring it all together into the book of al-Muwatta, what's known as al-Muwatta. He presented it to 70 scholars, 70 fuqaha, and it seems to be the same 70 that gave him permission to give fatwa. But so he went to 70 fuqaha, and he says all of them watta'uni, they all agreed upon. Muwatta means that which is agreed upon. They all agreed upon the ahadith that were in al-Muwatta. So he went and he confirmed them with 70 scholars of that time. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, he collects these ahadith and he's in constant review of them. In the sense he's adding, he's decreasing and things of that sort. And some of the students, they started to collect the Muwatta as well because they were memorizing the Muwatta. It's beautiful because Shah Waliullah Dihlawi, he says that, and rightfully so, that the Muwatta became a text in all four madhabs. Because Shaybani, who came from Abu Hanifa, he memorized the Muwatta. And actually one of the two famous narrations of al-Muwatta, the two documentations of al-Muwatta, is from Shaybani. And Shaybani, after documenting the Muwatta, he put notes of the Hanafi approach to these things, the Hanafi opinion as well, on some of the ahadith that were mentioned. So it influenced the Hanafi text. Ash-Shafi'i memorized it. Shafi'i memorized the Muwatta. And he even made his daughter memorize it. Ash-Shafi'i and his daughter memorized the Muwatta. Imam Ahmad memorized the Muwatta from Ash-Shafi'i. Ash-Shafi'i taught Imam Ahmad the Muwatta. So the Muwatta became a primary text in all four madhabs. Okay, it became very, very, very important. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, subhanAllah, this is just the legacy. He said that I studied the Muwatta with 17 scholars, but I wasn't satisfied with studying it until I studied it with a Shafi'i. So just the chain here continues here. Like I studied it with a bunch of ulama, but then Muwatta, when I studied it with a Shafi'i, then I was happy. Now one word got out that Imam Malik was collecting the Muwatta. What do you think a lot of other scholars tried to do? They tried to do their own Muwatta. So you had over 100 Muwattas that were made at the time of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. And subhanAllah, listen to this, again, the sincerity of this man. Some people came to him and said, don't you want to, criticize the hadith and the other Muwatta? Aren't you upset about this, that everyone now is trying to duplicate your effort? You know what he says? He says, مَا كَانَ لِلَّهِ بَقِيَ. He said, whatever was done for Allah will remain. And not a single one of those Muwattas remains except for the Muwatta of Imam Malik. Subhanallah. So he said, if it was done for Allah, it will remain. I'm not going to bother myself trying to put down other people's work. I'm just going to focus on what I'm doing. And if it was done for Allah, it will remain. SubhanAllah, what an approach, to da'wah, to ilm, to knowledge, and so on and so forth. That it is what it is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make something out of it if it's sincere, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take it away if it's not sincere. The two main narrations of Muwatta, so we said there's Muhammad ibn Hasan al-Shaybani. Then you have Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi. Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi, who was a scholar that came from Andalus. So he kind of took the Muwatta to that part of the world. And we'll see how Andalus became a stronghold for the Maliki school of thought as well. And it continued for a very long time. So anyway, so the Muwatta was taught and it was gathered, and it was about 2,000 ahadith in total at the end of it. It was printed, it was copied and printed over 100 times. Okay? And Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala said there is no book on the face of the earth that is more more authentic after the Quran than the Muwatta. The most authentic book after the Quran. Now of course this was before al-Bukhari was compiled. So the scholars said once al-Bukhari was compiled, it took the cake. And most of the narrations of al-Muwatta in fact ended up in al-Bukhari anyway. Okay? So this was the most authentic book at that time. There were 4 ahadith in it that Imam Malik rahimahullah used the words balaghani. Balaghani. Now when he says balaghani, it's been said to me, then this shows you that the hadith is mursal, that it's rushed, that there's a missing chain there. And he had 4 ahadith that were like that. And as-Suyuti rahimahullah ta'ala, he basically found the complete narration for all 4 of those ahadith. So he went through those 4 ahadith that were rushed, where Imam Malik said balaghani, it was said to me. And Imam Malik is making it clear when he says balaghani, that, you know, look, I'm not 100% certain about this, but everyone I've heard it from is very trustworthy, but there is a missing link here between him and the Prophet ﷺ. And as-Suyuti went and he actually completed the link of those ahadith. Now to show you, subhanAllah, how many people, or how widespread the Muwatta became geographically in the Muslim world. There were 69 different people that narrated the Muwatta directly from Imam Malik. 69 narrators of the Muwatta, meaning 69 people that sat with Imam Malik and memorized it with him. There were 17 in Medina, 17 in Medina, 2 of them in Mecca, one of them being a Shafi'i. All right, so 17 in Medina, 2 in Mecca, 10 of them were in Egypt, 27 of them were in Iraq, 13 of them were in Andalus, 2 of them were from Al-Qayrawan, 2 from Al-Qayrawan, 2 from Tunis, and 7 from Ash-Sham. What's Qayrawan? You guys don't know what Qayrawan is? Morocco. Guys have never heard of the university Qayrawan? Tunis, Morocco, somewhere in North Africa. Let's just put it that way. Inshallah ta'ala, I'll give you guys more details of it. But so just to remember now, 7 from Ash-Sham, 2 from Tunis, 2 from Al-Qayrawan, 13 in Andalus, 27 in Iraq, 10 in Egypt, 2 in Mecca, 17 in Medina. Which shows you that Al-Muwatta spread all over the world very quickly. Right? The fact that all these scholars came from all over the world, it spread very, very, very quickly. Harun al-Rashid, rahimahullah ta'ala, Harun al-Rashid, the good guy, he came to Imam Malik rahimahullah towards the end of his life, and Harun al-Rashid said, I'm going to hang the Muwatta in the Kaaba and make everyone bound by it. Because it was the first of its type. I mean, the Muwatta was a very unique work. It still is, subhanAllah. Fiqhi categories are, organized in hadith way that give you the answers through the hadith. It's a very beautiful way of writing things. So Harun al-Rashid said, I want to put this in the Kaaba and make it from now on, the state law. Imam Malik rahimahullah said no. He said, Allah allowed the companions to differ, and that is a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's not going to be right. It would not be right to bound the people by anything other than Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. SubhanAllah, if the man was arrogant, if the man was proud, wouldn't he have said, yeah, sure, great. You imagine if someone offered you to hang your book in the Kaaba? Right? How amazing that is. What kind of an honor that is that's being bestowed upon you. Imam Malik rahimahullah wanted no part of it. And subhanAllah, it's very important to point out here that the scholars, they say that had Imam Malik rahimahullah said, okay, fine, go ahead and do it, what probably would have happened is that, when some other Khalifa took over, they would have burned the book and it would have led to a bunch of fanaticism and things of that sort. But instead, Allah made His work survive despite that. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made His work survive despite that. Now, as far as the political environment and involvement of Imam Malik, we talked about how Imam Malik rahimahullah was with the Khulafa. Imam Malik was born into the Umayyad period. So he witnessed some of the Umayyad Khilafah. He was born in the Khilafah of Al-Walid ibn Abdul Malik. So you could actually look at that chart. You'll see Al-Walid ibn Abdul Malik. Not the second Al-Walid. Al-Walid ibn Abdul Malik is right there in the year 86 after Hijrah. Okay, so he was born, what year was Imam Malik born? Does anyone remember? 93 after Hijrah. Oh, it's right there anyway. All right, so Imam Malik rahimahullah was born in that time. He was also born in the time of Hajjaj. He was still a little baby, obviously, when Hajjaj was wreaking havoc on the world. He was only 2 years old when Hajjaj passed away. So then he saw and by the way, Hajjaj is not a Khalifa. He's put there because Hajjaj was a governor. He was the Amir of Iraq in the time of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan and continued. But Hajjaj wreaked a lot of havoc, so it's important to know his place in history there. So he survived. Hajjaj went from Abdul Malik ibn Marwan to Al-Walid as well. So he saw the Khilafah of Al-Walid, then he saw the Khilafah of Suleiman. Then Umar ibn Abdul Aziz assumed the Khilafah when Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala was 6 years old. So he witnessed Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. Then he witnessed the downturn from Yazid ibn Abdul Malik, and then Hisham ibn Abdul Malik, and then Al-Walid, and so on and so forth. He witnessed the revolt of Zayd ibn Ali, the unsuccessful revolt of Zayd ibn Ali, which took place against Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. So he witnessed a lot of turmoil, and he tried to maintain a very Abdullah ibn Umar-like personality. He tried to maintain an overall neutral stance to politics. He gave his advice to everybody when he was asked. He maintained his integrity, he maintained his principle, but at the same time, he just didn't really get involved. He didn't have much to do with these things. The Khawarij also had their revolt in the year 129 after Hijrah. There was a big Khariji revolt. Now, subhanAllah, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, by the way, and this also shows you the personality of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he actually tried to negotiate with the Khawarij, and he managed to quell their rebellion peacefully. So the Khawarij tried to rise up in the year 101, and Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was able to negotiate with them to put their arms aside and to be quiet for some time. All right? They rose up again in the year 129, and Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, he condemned that as well, and Imam Malik rahimahullah spoke very clear about them, but Imam Malik also did not get involved in fighting the Khawarij, and he still, he didn't mess with them too much. And the people asked him, what should we do about the Khawarij? And look at his answer. He says, دَعْهُمْ, leave them, يَنْتَقِمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ ظَالِمٍ بِظَالِمٍ. Allah will always destroy an oppressor with another oppressor. Allah is going to take care of them the way He took care of oppressors before them. Allah will allow an oppressor to rise up and destroy them. And that's exactly what happened. Okay, the Khawarij rebellion was crushed. And then after that, finally you have the Abbasi rule, which came in the year 132 after Hijrah. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, at that time, how old is he going to be? If he was born in the year 93 and it's the year 132, how old is he supposed to be then? 39 years old. Okay? So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, he witnessed that. And Imam Malik rahimahullah, again, he was quiet through the entire thing. The Umayyas, the Abbasis, he kept his quietness through the entire thing. And then we find that his political involvement changes in the year 145, when Imam Malik was 52 years old. And this is in the reign of Al-Mansur, Abu Ja'far Al-Mansur. Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala speaks. Now, here's why Imam Malik rahimahullah gets involved here. Now, one of the reasons why Imam Malik stayed in Medina, I need you guys to understand this is very important. One of the reasons he stayed in Medina is because he didn't want to get involved with politics. Most of the stuff that was happening, the revolt of Zayd ibn Ali, the disputes between the Umayyas and the Abbasis and so on and so forth, this was all in Iraq, meaning Imam Malik was being asked from a distance. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And Imam Malik is saying, let the scholars of Iraq take care of it. That's not my business right now. All right? But now what makes this revolt different? If you remember, Abu Hanifa had a teacher named Abdullah ibn al-Hasan al-Muthanna. And his children were the ones that Abu Ja'far pursued and he tortured and so on and so forth. Muhammad was the one that rose up, the revolt of Muhammad and Nafs al-Zakiyah. His nickname was Nafs al-Zakiyah, but he was Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Hasan. All right? Now when he rose up, his revolt actually started in Medina. So Imam Malik has no choice but to express an opinion on this. He actually rose up in Medina, away from Baghdad, and he gains the support of the people of Medina. And by the way, the Khawarij, temporarily, even Imam Malik expressing his opinion on the Khawarij, subhanAllah, interestingly enough, it's because they took the manbar in Medina. One of them took the pulpit in Medina and started to give a speech and so on and so forth. So it came to them, and Imam Malik said, don't worry, these people are going to be crushed in no time. And the people naturally got turned off by them, because the Khawarij were saying that someone who drinks is a kafir, and someone who does this is a kafir. They were doing takfir of people. So the people of Medina got turned off by them anyway, so they lost their moral authority. The people didn't like them in Medina, and then the Umayyas were able to come and wipe them out, and it was no issue. Now here, when Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyah, when he rises up in Medina, he also takes the minbar in Medina and he gives the khutbah, and the people of Medina are confused. They don't know whether to rally around him or not. So they went to Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, and Imam Malik, again, this is someone who's getting sponsored by the Abbasi government anyway. And they're saying, what do? We took bay'ah to Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, and here we have Muhammad Nafs al-Zakiyah, who we really do like. He's from the family of the Prophet ﷺ. What do we do? And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Laysa ala mukrahin yamin." The one who gets into the one who is forced into a divorce or the one who's been forced into a marriage, al-mukrah, the one who is, or makruhin, people that are forced into a marriage, their divorce does not count. They have no expiation. The marriage is automatically revoked. All right, so if you were forced into a marriage, the divorce automatically takes place. So they understood that Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala was saying that we are not held by our pledge to Abu Ja'far because we took that pledge to Abu Ja'far out of fear. We were forced into it out of kurh. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, he supported the rebellion of Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyah, Muhammad al-Muthanna. In fact, As-Suyuti rahimahullah ta'ala, he narrates it. He says, وَمِمَّنْ أَفْتَى بِجَوَازِ الْخُرُوجِ مَعْ مُحَمَّدٍ عَلَى الْمَنْصُورِ مالك ibn Anas رحمه الله تعالى وقيل له إن في أعناقنا بيعة للمنصور فقال إنما بيعتم مكروهين. That, he says that in essence, the Suyuti says that one of the people that was asked for fatwa on joining the revolution of Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyah was Malik. And they asked Malik about the bay'ah they took to Abu Ja'far, and he says, you gave that pledge under pressure, under force. So Imam Malik also now supports a revolution, but he supports it in a very subtle way. He's making it very clear to his students that he supports him, and people know his position, but he's making it very, very, very subtle. And so that's when now Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala is also going to be tortured. Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala was beaten by the governor of Medina, and the governor of Medina's name was Ja'far ibn Suleiman. Ja'far ibn Suleiman. So the Khalifa's Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, the governor of Medina was Ja'far ibn Suleiman. He had Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala dragged and beaten until his shoulders were dislocated. He shaved the face of Imam Malik rahimahullah. So can you imagine, subhanAllah, a man with the hayba of Imam Malik, the presence that Imam Malik had? He was dragged in the streets, his face was shaved, his beard was shaved off. And so he was even tied to an animal, and he was spit at, and he was lashed in front of the people. In essence, he wanted to humiliate Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, and he said, take back the fatwa that you gave. Take back what you said. And Imam Malik kept on repeating the same thing. He kept on saying that my name is Malik. He said, فَمَنْ عَرَفَنِي قَدْ عَرَفَنِي. Those of you who know me, you know me. And those of you who don't know me, my name is Imam Malik, by the way, because he looks so different. And Imam Malik, this is dignity, by the way. Imam Malik is showing that none of this is getting to me. Do what you want to me. You're shaving my face, you're beating me. It's not affecting my positions. And he says, and I'm saying that the one who takes bay'ah, and he actually made it very clear, the one who took bay'ah in force is not bound by that bay'ah, is not bound by that pledge that he took. Now, Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, when that happened, when Ja'far ibn Suleiman did that to him, the people of Medina now that were even friendly towards the Abbasids, because the revolt of Muhammad ibn Abdullah Nafs al-Zakiyah was crushed. So the people that were even still friendly towards the Abbasiyah that didn't really support his revolt, they all started to support the revolt against al-Abbasiyah because they hated seeing Imam Malik humiliated that way. So when Ja'far ibn Suleiman saw that the people were turning against him, that everyone was turning against him because of that, and he was only ruining himself, he let Imam Malik go. And Abu Ja'far, now the damage was done. Imam Malik rahimahullah, his shoulders were dislocated. Again, he was beaten pretty badly. He was imprisoned for some time. And Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, when he came to Medina, he apologized to Imam Malik officially, and he held a ceremony to try to apologize to Imam Malik rahimahullah, because he wanted to save face. This was done on his watch, but he wanted to say that this was just Ja'far ibn Suleiman, his stupidity. He said, we're going to take care of him. We're going to punish him for doing that to you. Yeah, Imam, you're someone that shouldn't be treated like that, and so on and so forth. And Imam Malik saw right through it. Imam Malik rahimahullah, when Abu Ja'far spoke to him, he just turned his back and walked away from him. Abu Ja'far knew that if he tries to, basically they were testing the waters, what happens if we try to mess with Imam Malik? And he knew that, the people of Medina, because the revolt of Muhammad was already crushed now, but he knew that the people of Medina were about to just organically revolt against them just because of the way that they treated Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. So Abu Ja'far, after apologizing to him and things of that sort, Imam Malik rahimahullah, he turned his back on him. He didn't answer. And Imam Malik went right back to teaching in the masjid. That's his approach. And subhanAllah, I want you to see the heart of this man. This is really, really something profound. They came to him and they said, why don't you do something? Yeah, Imam, call the people to rise up against them. Do this, do that, do this. Imam Malik rahimahullah says, I'm not going to ruin the ummah for my own personal grudge. The sanctity of the peace and the stability in the ummah is more important than my personal grudge. And he says, they said, well, aren't you going to seek retribution against Ja'far ibn Suleiman? This is very, very, very touching. The answer of Imam Malik rahimahullah. He says, خِفْتُ أَنْ أَمُوتَ أَمْسًا فَأَلْقَى النَّبِيَّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ فَأَسْتَحِي مِنْهُ أَنْ يُدْخَلَ بَعْضُ أَهْلِهِ النَّارَ بِسَبَبِي. He said that I am afraid of dying tomorrow or dying today and meeting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and one of his relatives goes to hell because of me. Why? Because Al-Abbasiyya were the relatives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he said, I don't make dua against him. I ask Allah to forgive him, because I don't want to meet the Prophet ﷺ having entered one of his relatives into hellfire. Allahu Akbar. Look at the love that he has for the Prophet ﷺ. I don't want to be responsible for that. It's his right, it's your haqq. And Abu Lahab is going to hell because of the way he treated the Prophet ﷺ. But Imam Malik says, no, I don't want to meet the Prophet ﷺ with that on my back on the Day of Judgment. At the end of the day, these people are relatives to the Prophet ﷺ. I don't want to be involved in that. So he refused to even make dua against Ja'far ibn Suleiman. That's the heart and that's the izzah of Imam Malik rahimahullah. That's his dignity, his honor. And that gained the respect of the people, right? That he doesn't let his personal grudges. Because if Imam Malik would have stood on the minbar in Medina and said, all right, everyone, you saw what he did to me, get him. Everyone would have got up. It would have been absolute chaos in Medina, but he didn't want to disrupt Medina because he was upset, because he was harmed. And Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, when people came to him and they reminded him of that incident, listen to what he says. He says, "La khayra fi man la yu'dha fi hadha al-amr." There is no good in a man who's not harmed in this situation. Meaning, there's no good in a man who's not harmed in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at some point in his life. Either financially, physically, emotionally. There's no good in a person who's not going to struggle for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said, alhamdulillah, people have been through much worse than me. Look at what happened to Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Look at what happened to these other people. People have been through much worse than I have. And instead, Abu Ja'far eventually passed on, and then, the Khilafah al-Abbasiyya actually became a decent and beautiful Khilafah. Harun al-Rashid really opened up the doors for the ulama. Harun al-Rashid was a righteous man. SubhanAllah, he's a fascinating figure. I mean, don't take that incident with Imam Malik and pass right off his character. He's a beautiful man, beautiful human being who made a few mistakes, but he was a righteous man, and he was the opposite of Al-Ja'far. Abu Ja'far, he opened up the Muslim world for halaqat and differences of opinion and people to talk and people to even criticize him and criticize his policies. He was not a dictator at all, and he gained the respect of the ummah. And you could say that the only reason, because look how long the Abbasis survive after him. It just goes on and on and on after him. He pretty much saved the Abbasi Khilafah by his good character and by his good manners and gaining the love and the respect of the people. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, he continued to teach after that, and he was a very old man at that point anyway. And Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, and this is something, it's also quite heartbreaking that Imam Malik stopped coming to the masjid altogether. And people would ask him why. I mean, he never came to the masjid despite living very close to the masjid. And people asked him why, and he said there are some excuses that are not to be spoken. And Imam Malik rahimahullah had developed a urinary incontinence. So Imam Malik rahimahullah felt ashamed, to come to the masjid and maybe this is the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ and so on and so forth. So Imam Malik rahimahullah actually stayed home for his last, for the last part of his life. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him in that he passed away in Medina. And the Prophet ﷺ says that whoever dies in Medina, then I will intercede for him on the Day of Judgment. And I want to show you something that's just beautiful. Now the graves in Al-Baqi' are not marked, by the way. But this is the grave of Imam Malik, confirmed by the way, because they used to be marked to some extent, or at least it's known by historians. The one in the front is the grave of Imam Malik, the one in the back is the grave of Nafi', Mawla Abdullah ibn Umar. So he's actually buried right next to Nafi', radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa rahimahullah. So this is actually, if when you go to Medina, if you can kind of see the entrance, it's hard to see from the picture, but this is right on the edge. There are a few graves, the children of the Prophet ﷺ and so on and so forth, his family that are in the front of the masjid, they're close to the masjid. That's the grave of Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him and accept from him. So he's buried in Al-Baqi', which is only fitting. What is the usul of Imam Malik, rahimahullah? So now let's just talk about his madhab. So we said his teachers are too many to count. I mean, his teachers are the children of the Sahaba, and they really are too many to count. But you can kind of see here how he traces it back at the end of the day to Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu primarily, but all of the students that would carry his madhab, rahimahullah ta'ala, all of the teachers that he had the opportunity to learn from, some of the greatest ones of his time. How did his madhab spread? Two ways. Number one, Al-Muwatta. Al-Muwatta was printed over and over and over again. It became the text in the Muslim Ummah, despite whatever madhab you followed. Even if you were a Hanafi, the Muwatta was a text that you had to have if you were a scholar, a person of knowledge. They all had the text of Al-Muwatta. Also, there was, and I have a manuscript of Al-Muwatta. Where is it? Maybe it's not? There we go. So this is the manuscript. This is one of the early writings of Al-Muwatta, one of the manuscripts that survived from the time of Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, from the early writings of Al-Shaybani. And Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, his madhab spread by Al-Muwatta, and it also spread by a book that was written called Al-Mudawwana. Al-Mudawwana. Al-Mudawwana was written by a scholar by the name of Abdus Salam ibn Sa'id. And his nickname, in fact, you won't even find Abdus Salam ibn Sa'id, you'll find his nickname is Sahnun. As-Sahnun. Sahnun is a common name in the Maliki madhab. Sahnun means a very fast bird. Sahnun is a very fast bird. So Sahnun was a scholar from Tunisia, one of the students of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, though he seems to have been more of a student of Abdurrahman ibn al-Qasim from Egypt, so he's not a direct student, but he's from that generation. And basically, Sahnun was, the reason why he's called the fast bird is because he was really fast in processing information. He was really intelligent, really bright. So they called him Sahnun because he sees it and he gets it right away. So he compiled the fiqh of Imam Malik rahimahullah. He traveled the world, met all of the students of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala from the different parts of the world, and compiled everything into this collection of Al-Mudawwana, all of the opinions of Malik, all the opinions of his students, all the discussions between him and his students. It's really it's a fascinating work, subhanAllah, it's beautiful. And at the age of 74 years old, he accepted a post in Qayrouan, and Qayrouwan it's Tunisia, okay? It's part of Tunisia. And the reason why he accepted the post, he refused accepting a post his entire life, but he said, look, I'll accept a post here on two conditions. Number one, that if any of your family members get in trouble, he's talking to the royal family, I will prosecute them just like I prosecute everyone else. Number two, I no longer want a salary from you. SubhanAllah, so I'll be your qadi, but I won't take a salary from you, and I'm going to prosecute your family members if they make a mistake. And SubhanAllah, he didn't take a salary from them. And he did prosecute some of their family members, and it sort of came back on them. Some of the Abbasi rulers that were there in Tunisia. So he spread Al-Mudawwana. Al-Mudawwana was written and it was copied multiple times as well. There is also what's known, there is a man by the name of Al-Asad ibn al-Furat. Al-Asad ibn al-Furat. Al-Asad ibn al-Furat is also a student of Imam Malik, and Al-Asad ibn al-Furat, he was a little scared that the Hanafi madhab was going to wipe out the Maliki madhab. Why? Because Abu Hanifa addressed so many hypotheticals that Imam Malik didn't. So in essence, it was just going to be more relevant to people than the Maliki madhab. So Al-Asad ibn al-Furat, he used Maliki usul, the Maliki principles, which we're going to cover, to answer the Hanafi hypotheticals. You understand? So he took those hypothetical questions, and then he took Imam Malik's principle of deriving opinions, and he compiled it all together. And of course, the madhab of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala spread in multiple places in the world. What is the madhab of Imam Malik? What are the usul of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala? Number one, it starts off with the Quran, just like everyone else. Nass al-Quran wa Nass al-Hadith. So the text of the Quran, the text of the Hadith. So that's number one, the Quran. Number two is the Sunnah. However, to Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, a sound Hadith, and this is actually everyone after Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Imam Abu Hanifa, it was Quran 1 and then Hadith 2. To the other three madhabs, the Quran and the authentic ahadith are on the same level of tashri', are on the same level of legislation. Meaning a sound hadith is just as, it carries the same weight in legislation, in tashri' as an ayah of Quran. And in fact, by the way, so you had Imam Abu Hanifa who said the Quran and then the hadith. You had Malik, al-Shafi'i and Ahmad who said the Quran and the hadith together. And you had Sufyan al-Thawri and some of the scholars that even said that an authentic hadith has more weight in legislation, not in barakah. The Quran is always greater than hadith, but more weight in legislation. Why? Because the hadith were more specific. So he gave it, an example of that. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not say in the Quran, aqim as-salah, establish the prayer. If there was no aqim as-salah in the Quran, but the people gave the sunnah its proper credibility, would the salah be lost? No, we'd still have the 5 prayers as they are. But if it only said in the Quran, aqim as-salah, but then we don't have the sunnah, would the salah be lost? Yes. So the argument that even went to that side was that it takes even a greater level. But the majority of scholars said they put it on the same level. Also, Imam Malik rahimahullah did not differentiate between a hadith that was ahad or mutawatir, had one single chain or was narrated widely. As long as the chain was authentic, Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, he took it. Number 3, he has the ijma' of the Sahaba, the consensus of the companions. When the companions agree upon something, the unanimous agreement of the companions. Okay? Number 4, and this is the distinguishing feature of the school of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, is the practice of the people of Medina. This is the distinguishing trait of the Maliki school. What that means is Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala will take the practice of the people of Medina even over a hadith. Why? Because he's living just 79 years removed from the Prophet ﷺ. These are the children of the Sahaba here. So the practices of the scholars and the learned ones of Medina, in his mind, is a hujjah. It's a proof. It means that they knew these ahadith, they practiced them. There's no way that in that short span of time, while the houses of the Sahaba are still there, their children and so on and so forth, that the a'mal of the people of Medina would be different from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So he took the a'mal of Ahl al-Madinah, the practices of the people of Medina. And Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala actually said that this was, he actually agreed with this methodology. So Ibn Taymiyyah, who's a Hanbali, actually agreed with the methodology of Malik, in that the practice of the people of Medina takes precedence even over the hadith in that time, only in that time. Meaning, obviously with due time, things will move on and so on and so forth. But collectively, if the people of Medina are upon something, that means they learned it from the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? So that's number 4. Number 5 was al-qiyas. However, Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala didn't like analogical reasoning. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala resorted to qiyas even in, only in absolute darura, only in absolute necessity. Number 6, and this is actually, Imam Malik rahimahullah preferred what I'm about to mention here over the use of qiyas. He would use this one first, which is known as al-istislah, al-masalih wal-mafasid, looking at public welfare. What will benefit more? Okay? An example of that, and this is something that Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu did. And what that means is, it's an alternative to qiyas. Instead of reasoning and finding an analogy, choose an opinion that's true to the text, that's true to the Quran and Sunnah, and that will benefit the people, that will be of public welfare, not individual welfare. So it's not hiyal. Hiyal are the judicial tricks, are for individual loopholes. this is the islah of society, right? What's going to benefit the people. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he did this. This is narrated from him, that when Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu established al-kharaj, he established the taxation. During the conquests, typically speaking, whenever an army would conquer a land, they would just distribute the land and they distribute the spoils amongst those that conquered. But what Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, what happened with him is that they were getting into fertile territories and the Bedouins weren't good at planting things and gardening and things of that sort. So you had the Bedouins from the Arabs and they're going to Persia and things of that sort, a lot of greenery, and they just weren't good. So they were killing a lot of the land. The agriculture was actually suffering because, guess what? A lot of the Sahaba didn't know how to garden. They didn't know how to maintain a garden properly because they were desert Arabs. So Umar radiallahu anhu, what he found instead was, he split the land. So he left the original owners there to have half the land. And then he taxed those that maintain half the land. And from that tax, it will go to the army of, to the Sahaba that went there. Meaning what? The Sahaba still benefit. They still maintain the benefit. And the people as well, they get to maintain their gardens and things of that sort. They still get to benefit from it. So it's a win-win situation for the people, and it's still true to the text. Right? They're still receiving their spoils, and they're not, and things of that sort. It's still true to the text. So this is something that Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala liked, which is why many of the scholars of maqasid, al-sharia, the objectives of sharia and things of that sort, when they get into the topics of al-masalih or al-mafasid, number one, they tend to be Maliki scholars. Okay, like the waraqat of Imam al-Juwayni. These are very famous texts in maqasid al-sharia, the objectives of Islamic law and legislation. And they tend to be Maliki scholars because Imam Malik looked into this concept of the overall benefit of society. And also Imam Malik rahimahullah had saddu dhara'i'. Saddu dhara'i', what it means is cutting off the root of the branch. Okay? What does that mean? Does anyone know what saddu dhara'i' means? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Adam alayhi salam and Hawa, la taqraba hadhihi ash-shajara. Don't go close to the tree. And when Allah tells us, la taqrabu zina, don't go close to adultery. In essence, Imam Malik rahimahullah said what leads to haram is haram in and of itself. So removing the things that lead to haram in society as well, removing the things that will lead us to a harmful place as well. And some of the later scholars of the Maliki school, they also introduced fathu dhara'i', opening the means to good as well. That if there's something that can facilitate halal easier, and there's something that can facilitate goodness in a society, on the basis of this asl, of this principle, it also becomes a source of law. It also should be implemented in a society. So Imam Malik looks at the overall society as well. And that's a strength of his madhab. Okay? Now as far as where the Maliki madhab, no, I didn't mention the texts, did I? Did I give you guys texts yet? Okay, so in the Maliki school, number one, just some of the terms that are used. When you hear al-Madiniyin, obviously it means the people of Medina. Okay, the people of Medina, and what it refers to in particular, Imam Malik and his direct students in Medina. So in the Maliki text, when you say al-Madiniyin, it means the scholars of Medina there. Then you have al-Masriyin, the Egyptians. And this refers to the students of Imam Malik from Egypt. Actually, most of Imam Malik's prominent students were from Egypt, by the way. Most of the prominent students were from Egypt. Ibn al-Qasim, Abdurrahman ibn al-Qasim, who spent 20 years with him. Abdullah ibn Wahab, al-Ashhab, a very famous scholar as well. These were people that spent time with him. Then he had al-Iraqiyin, right? So the scholars of Iraq. Then they had al-Maghariba, the Moroccans. So they basically class, they have a certain group of scholars they're referring to when they mention the location. Okay? In their idea, al-Qarinan, the two companions, it refers to al-Ashhab and Ibn Nafi', two scholars that are there. So they have a lot of terminology, lughat al-fiqh here. So you'll find it very, very, very constant. I don't even know how to go through all of them right now, but I have a whole bunch of them. And I think you guys will probably fall asleep by the time I get to the end of it. So if you guys want that, inshallah ta'ala, I have it here. The lugha from the Maliki madhab, the language that's used in the terms in the Maliki madhab. Some of the important texts in the Maliki madhab, one of the absolute masterpieces of the Maliki madhab is al-Dhakhira. Al-Dhakhira means the hidden treasure. And it was written by Imam al-Qarafi, rahimahullah ta'ala, in the 13th century. And basically what he did was al-Qarafi, the reason why it's called al-Dhakhira, the stored treasure, he basically summarized every Maliki book that existed at his time, and summarized the principles and things of that sort. And he took the similarities and things of that sort. And then you have what's known as Mukhtasar al-Khalil. Mukhtasar al-Khalil. This is the most famous Maliki text that's studied. Mukhtasar al-Khalil. Al-Khalil ibn Ishaq was an Egyptian scholar in the Maliki school, also from the 14th century, I guess, not the 13th century, the 14th century. And this Mukhtasar al-Khalil became became basically the law manual for all Maliki territories. So anywhere the Maliki madhab spread, they used Mukhtasar al-Khalil. Anywhere you go, there's Mukhtasar al-Khalil. There have been over 60 sharhs, over 60 explanations of Mukhtasar al-Khalil. Actually, one of the criticisms from the other schools of thought towards the Malikis is that they left the fiqh of Malik and they just focused on Mukhtasar al-Khalil. Like they memorized it and they didn't even pay attention to what came before that, because Mukhtasar al-Khalil was considered sufficient for them. They just memorized the manual. So they weren't really paying attention to how the opinions were derived anymore. Finally, you have the Waraqat of al-Juwayni. The Waraqat of al-Juwayni. And that's a great text on the usul of the Maliki madhab. And again, it's one that's used also to understand the greater objectives in society and things of that sort. And what's the most famous opinion in the Maliki madhab? You know, it's funny because we have these, like we basically have reduced like every madhab to like a famous opinion or two. Okay, what's known as sadr, the hands to the side. Okay, unfolded hands in salah. That's the most famous opinion of the Maliki madhab, that you'll see most Malikis, they will pray with their hands to the side. This is a very, very, very interesting debate amongst the ulama. Why? Because those that want to prove that this opinion is baseless will say that he only did this because his shoulders were dislocated. And there were students that came and they saw Imam Malik rahimahullah praying with his arms to his side, and they went back and they told their students that this is what Imam Malik was doing, so we should all do this too. However, honestly, and I have to say, some of my teachers said that, and I find it to be very untrue to the text. I really do. I think there's a lot of madhabism there, there's a lot of asabiyah there, so to try to prove the opinion baseless. And the main thing that's used as a proof of that is that Imam Malik rahimahullah narrates in his Muwatta that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that we the Prophets were told to put our right hands over our left hands in salah. However, Imam Malik purposely leaves narrations in al-Muwatta that he doesn't agree with. He even said it himself. He said that we left some of the ahadith in al-Muwatta لِيَعْلَمَ النَّاسِ أَنَّا عَلَى عِلْمٍ تَرَكْنَا, that we are upon some things of knowledge, that there are some things that we do, or that we understand these ahadith. We want people to know that we know these ahadith, and we still chose a different hadith or a different interpretation. So for example, in the Maliki madhab, Imam Malik rahimahullah doesn't hold that the 6 days of Shawwal should be fasted. He actually sees a problem with fasting or specifying the 6 days of Shawwal in Shawwal. Alright? Meaning in the Arabic language, sitta min Shawwal, 6 from Shawwal onwards. It can mean 6 from Shawwal, meaning after Ramadan, or 6 within Shawwal. Imam Malik says, I did not see the people of Medina trying to fast 6 days in the month of Shawwal. Rather, what the Prophet ﷺ meant was 6 days after Ramadan is over, because the Prophet ﷺ says that a hasana bi'ashri amthaliha, that a good deed is multiplied by 10, and so you have a month that's multiplied by 10, that becomes 10 months, and then 3 days and 3 days multiplied by 10 becomes 60 days, 2 months become the entire year. Did I lose you guys? No, it's math. Come on, guys. Totally lost you guys. I'm going to say it again, okay, for those of you that are lost, right? The Prophet ﷺ says, Al-Hasana bi'ashri amthaliha. A good deed is multiplied by 10. Okay? So the Prophet ﷺ, when he says that, according to Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, his understanding, that, the Prophet ﷺ says, whoever fasts Ramadan and he follows it up with 6 from Shawwal, he's simply saying, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that if you fast 1 month and it's multiplied by 10, then you have fasted 10 months of the year. To make it an entire year, take 6 days extra of the year. And if you multiply 6 days by 10, it becomes 60 days. So another 2 months, so it covers the year. But Imam Malik still chose to narrate the hadith there to show that he knows the hadith is there. Right? Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala does that at times, so I don't think it's a proof in and of itself to say that he narrates the hadith of putting the right hand over the left hand. And it was, Ibn Rushd, who's a great scholar, and not only the Maliki school, but also comparative fiqh as a whole, in Bidayat al-Mujtahid, he actually, puts the narrations of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, that Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala disliked a person folding their hands. And one of the reasons why he might have done that is because Imam Malik, this is another explanation perhaps, by the way, it's a debate even within the Maliki madhab, that Imam Malik didn't like the people considering it an obligatory action of salah, which it's not. Meaning it's not an obligatory action in any of the madhabs. If you put your hands to your side, it's not going to affect your salah. It's a sunnah at most. So some scholars, they said that Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, he did sadl to show that it's not an obligatory thing. However, there's a narration from him in Al-Mudawwana that he actually expressed the preference of putting the hands to the side. And Al-Mudawwana also narrates this from Imam Hassan al-Basri rahimahullah ta'ala and Imam al-Awza'i. So this is not necessarily something that was unique to him. This seems to have been an idea among some of Ahlul Hadith, some of the people of Hadith. And they quote some of their ahadith, and they say that the Prophet ﷺ, this was one explanation that was given to them, that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned doing this in the nawafil, in the voluntary prayers. So you hold yourself so you don't get tired and things of that sort. It's a long discussion because even some of the greatest Malikis rejected that. Al-Qadi Ayyad al-Maliki, one of the greatest Malikis, he said the correct opinion is to do this instead. So the point is, this is a debate within the Maliki madhab, but it's not, I don't think it's true to the text and to the way we understand Maliki usul to say that this was only because his shoulders were dislocated. Because there are clearly narrations that have been attributed to him in the earliest texts of Maliki fiqh. Even Ash-Shawkani rahimahullah ta'ala in his book Nail al-Awtar, and Imam Ash-Shawkani rahimahullah says, وَالرِّوَايَةُ الْأُولَى عَنْهُ هِيَ رِوَايَةُ الْجُمْهُورِ. He said that the first riwayah, which is al-irsal, leaving the arms, is the narration of the majority of his students, and it's the most famous one in the Maliki madhab. But then he quotes again some of the Maliki scholars that did al-qabd instead, that actually held their arms instead. So it's really, there is a basis for it. Some of the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where the Prophet ﷺ went through the steps of salah, he did not mention holding the arms. The other madhabs respond to that by saying that that's because the Prophet ﷺ was mentioning the obligatory actions of salah, not the sunan of salah. So it's a debate that can go on and on and on and on, but the only reason I'm mentioning it is because it's a famous issue. And it's important to also understand, again, the thought process of Imam Malik. That's not the only time that Imam Malik does that he leaves a hadith in there that he doesn't necessarily apply because the people of Medina, the scholars of Medina, were doing something different. Now, just to show you guys, where did the Maliki madhab spread? So the Maliki madhab spread primarily into North Africa, to Andalus. Okay? And then you have pockets of Hijaz, so pockets of the Gulf as well, where the Maliki madhab stood. But other than that, Imam Malik rahimahullah's madhab, for the most part, it was limited to, that's a pretty significant population. Africa is a pretty significant population. The Africans, pretty much took the madhab of Imam Malik rahimahullah. Anywhere that Islam reached in Africa pretty much adopted the Maliki madhab. Okay, the Maliki school of thought. And Andalus as well. And we know Andalus is it's a big player in Islamic history. Some of the greatest scholars, Imam al-Qurtubi rahimahullah ta'ala, essentially the tafsir of al-Qurtubi is basically using the Quran to, and many times to prove fiqhi opinions in the Maliki madhab. Okay, so ahkam al-Quran, when he does that, he's basically taking the tafsir and using it to prove the fiqhi opinions of the Maliki madhab. So it spread pretty far into North Africa and to the places where Islam reached in Africa, and in Spain as well, Andalus, and it remained as well in small pockets in Al-Hijaz. And those are the main places. Obviously you will find them everywhere. You'll find the Malikis everywhere for the most part. But that's pretty much it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy upon him, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive him and to join us with him in the highest level of Jannatul Firdaus with our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to the truth wherever it may be. Allahumma ameen. So you guys Maliki today, or are you still Hanafi? Anyone turned Maliki today? No one turned Maliki today? You turned Maliki? MashaAllah. Okay, good. 2, 3, a few guys. All right, tomorrow I'll make you Shafi'i inshallah.